Ernest Miller Hemingway, July 21, 1899 to July 2, 1961, was an American novelist, short story writer, and journalist. He was part of the Paris expatriate community of the 1920s and one of the veterans of World War I, later known as the Lost Generation. He received the Pulitzer Prize in 1953 and the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954 for his novel The Old Man and the Sea. The iceberg principle is a characteristic of Hemingway's writing style. It has been described as economical, concise, and had a significant influence on the development of 20th century literature. The central characters in his works are people who exhibit characteristics of Stoicism. Many of his works are now considered classics of American literature. Short stories. Ernest Hemingway Introduction. It is easy to see that in Hemingway's creative life, the number of works is not much. He only has about 100 short stories, 8 novels, and a few essays, memoirs, and a collection of 88 poems. However, Hemingway's uniqueness also appears in this seemingly limited point. From a few short stories that overlap with novels, The Merchant's Return, African Tales, works in this genre have the same common characteristics of being rich, diverse, concise, and concise. Hemingway's short stories are different in size. Some are less than 500 words, a reader writes, and some are longer than 12,000 words, The Brief Happy Life of Francis Macomber, but they are separate, vivid artistic worlds in the direction of convergence according to the iceberg principle. The exception and also very special in Hemingway's short stories is the section about Nick Adams. This is the central character throughout the 15 stories. But even though he is only Nick, even though he is only the focus of the main aesthetic ideas of one or all of those traditions about Nick, that does not mean that those stories only share the same poetic style. There are stories in which Nick appears only briefly, Indian Camp, The Doctor, and The Doctor's Wife, and there are stories in which Nick appears from beginning to end, The Big River with Two Hearts, The Last Good Place, The Summer Man. And what about their species? We can find in the world of Hemingway's short stories many excellent works, representing many styles of modern short stories, stream of consciousness short stories, Snows of Kilimanjaro, The Road You Will Never Follow, letter short stories, A Reader Writes, dramatic short stories, Today is Friday, mini short stories, very short story, modern fables, The Faithful Cow, philosophical short stories, A Clean and Bright Place, People of the World, short stories following the minimalist school, reflecting the small things of everyday life with a writing style of maximum simplification, Hills Like a Herd of White Elephants, Cat in the Rain. Or we can divide Hemingway's short stories into the themes of fishing, bullfighting, boxing, war, love, travel. No matter how we divide them, we can see the dynamism in Hemingway's narrative pen. This proves that Hemingway has always strived for a multifaceted short story. However, not all of his short stories were successful. As we know, the number of topics he wrote or the number of writing styles he used in his creations cannot alone reflect the talent of the writer. Only when the techniques are applied to a certain level of fluency will their aesthetic value be recognized. Most of Hemingway's short stories have achieved this. Although the writing style in Hemingway's short stories is very simple, the semantic changes are unpredictable. With Hemingway, from the title, the opening sentence, the development, and then the concluding sentence are continuous, interrupted, split horizontally and vertically, interwoven and then continued. Just like that, they are pushed to the last page. When the concluding sentence appears, in principle, that is when the story ends, but Hemingway's concluding sentences are like beginnings. The factors that contribute to this characteristic are ambiguity and open ending. The murders end with Nick's intention to leave and George's advice, "You better not think about it." This ending, like many stories about Nick, evokes another space of existence for Nick in the next story, suggesting an intertextual reading of Hemingway's short stories in general and the writings about Nick in particular. Thus, they are both short stories and as if they were separate parts of a novel. Reading the end of a problem, the reader will not be able to understand clearly what that problem is, but through the next story, The 3-Day Wind, we learn that it is the broken love story between Nick and Marjorie. Similarly, we hardly know why the boy in the Sea of Change, which can also be translated as the Great Change, threatened to kill a girl, then through many other short stories, including novels, we learn that the boy's moral corruption accusation against the girl is because she left him for another girl. She is a sympathizer. Affectionate. The ending, or more precisely, the ending sentences in Hemingway's short stories, are extremely important. Sometimes they are the key points to evoke the thematic idea of the works. Sometimes they themselves contain the thematic idea. The ending sentences in The Man of the World, The Red Man's Camp, The Brief Happy Life of Francis Macomber, will show this. The Brief Happy Life of Francis Macomber ends with Margot's plea and Wilson's silent agreement. Before that, throughout the entire work, in front of two men, one is her husband and the other is a hired hunter, Margot never lowered her voice. But when Macomber regained her courage and died, Wilson blamed her, Margot lowered her voice to beg. So the tragedy here is not only the tragedy of the poor husband, who was always cuckolded by his wife, but also the tragedy of both Margot and Wilson. In short, that brief happy life is the life of all three characters. They stand side by side, a husband who is afraid of his wife, a hired worker who is braver than his boss and sleeps with his boss's wife, then the husband suddenly realizes his role, so death is an understandable ending to that situation. The details of the story always evoke in readers the idea of if only. But the readers, the characters, and even the author themselves cannot resist that development. As if it were fate, the inevitability of life, Wilson's silence is not only silence without blame, silence without accusation, but also silence because the incident happened unexpectedly, unable to be explained. With this ending, Hemingway created three plot lines in the work. Readers can read the work in three lines: Macomber, Margot, and Wilson. They are the three central characters of the work. In other words, this is the phenomenon of decentering the character that many researchers have pointed out in the narrative prose works of 19th and 20th century writers. Hemingway's concluding sentences are very difficult to translate. Like the title, when translating, the translator must stick to the content of the work to choose the optimal translation. Thus, they must have lost some of their reflective value. However, due to this characteristic, and if considered from another perspective, we will see the polysemy in Hemingway's artistic language. The title of his short story also shows that, Just Soldier's Home alone can be translated in four ways: when the soldier returns, the soldier returns, soldier's home, soldier at home, and the mother of a queen can be translated, mother of the queen, mother of the show-off, mother of the gay guy, or more freely, mother of the bad guy. Corresponding to each title, the work will have a suitable content. This type of title, combined with the ambiguity of the endings, further enhances the semantic fields of the work. Normally, with titles that are difficult to translate, their meaning will be determined through the text. But with an open text like Hemingway's, it is difficult for us to grasp all the layers of meaning. The Canary for Whom is a typical story of this narrative style. There is an American lady and an American couple on a train to Lyon Station. The lady buys a canary for her daughter, who is very depressed because her mother forbade her to marry a Swiss man. According to her, American men are truly good husbands for American girls, and the happiness they bring to their families is great. Ending the journey with the American lady's endless praise for American men, the American couple got off the train and went home to arrange each to live in a different place. With just this ending sentence, Hemingway deserves to be one of the masters of narrative using satire. And so, when rereading the title, readers will surely find the answer: who is the canary for? Indeed, although specific and authentic, Hemingway's writing style is very difficult to grasp in a single meaning. This is because the life that is recreated so carefully and precisely is full of fluctuations, so the concrete has become vague. Two passengers waiting for the train at the refreshment shop next to the station, a man and a girl. "We could have it all," she said. "We could have it all, but every day we make it more impossible." "What are you saying? You said we could have everything." "We could have everything." "No, we can't." And so, they talk to each other until the end of the story. Through the dialogue, we only know that the man tries to persuade the girl to have some kind of surgery, perhaps an abortion, but the girl shows that she doesn't want to. M. Kundera, after stating the hypotheses about the cause of unhappiness, an affair, an illness, the man's selfishness, the girl's capriciousness, then concluded, "No, there is nothing easy in what is hidden behind that simple and ordinary dialogue. Any man can say the same things as the American, any woman can say the same things as the girl. If a man loves a woman or not, if he lies or is sincere, he still says the same thing. It is as if the conversation this rod has been waiting here since the beginning of time to be uttered by countless couples, without any connection to their own psychology." This is one of the best comments about hills like white elephants as well as about Hemingway's dialogue characteristics. Hemingway is very famous for dialogue. His dialogues are often clear about the subject and structure, but vague in the logic of the dialogue. The causality and continuity between them are often loose. Moreover, he obscures the purpose of the dialogue, about what, so the appeal of those pages is great. They have created artistic tension and forced readers to participate in co-creation. Besides dialogue, Hemingway's short stories also use internal monologue and stream of consciousness. Works with this type of language are often associated with the speaking subject being people with injuries. Mr. Fraser in The Gambler, The Nun, and The Radio, Nick in The Road You Will Never Take, The Old Waiter in A Clean and Bright Place, all speak in this way. Coming to Hemingway's short stories, we see two major themes emerge: war and everyday relationships. Writing about war, Hemingway sided with those who fought for progressive ideals. Fascism was his enemy. But he was afraid of war. This was reflected in the characters. War was a terrifying obsession on the lives of many people after the war. From the young soldier Krebs, Nick to Inquiry, all showed the true sin of the bloody war caused by the fascists. Leaving that war, Hemingway's soldiers were wounded, so they felt a sense of fear about the vague uncertainties that were always about to fall. They could not sleep at night without some light. They had seen how their souls left their bodies and then returned, so they did not want it to leave again. More tragically, they could not integrate into the community after the war. Then they traveled, drank, and worked. Love was abused to the point that they were no longer themselves. They were like beings, spinning in a spinning society. Civilization at that time was in danger of bankruptcy. Those sensitive people wanted to find a way out for themselves, for the community. And they found it by establishing their own moral values, their own way of life, and especially promoting spiritual strength. What is special about Hemingway is that no matter how many topics appeared in his writings, those topics were often where he relied on to convey other issues. Hemingway is a famous writer with many works about war, but he rarely directly exploited its heroic or horrifying qualities like many other writers, but mainly exploited human endurance. The topics of fishing, bullfighting, boxing, were also often used to exploit this element. $50,000 was written about the match between Jack and Walcott, but the theme of the story was not entirely focused on the match but mainly on the bet. $50,000 with the irony that the loser would get silver. So both Walcott and Jack, although not saying it, tried to lose. In terms of form, Jack was the one who could not stand up to Walcott, but he wanted to lose honorably, planning to break the rules rather than accept being knocked out. But before Jack could carry out his plan, Walcott attacked first. Jack was punched in the stomach and almost fell to the floor. At this point, the problem was not the glory of victory but money. If Jack could still stand, he would have a chance. In the end, Walcott writhed on the floor because Jack hit back where he must have hit him. Jack lost, because he broke the rules, but got money. While Walcott became the champion but lost money, he was the type of winner who receives nothing, as Hemingway said. From boxing, the story focuses on betting and has revealed to us an aspect of the modern social landscape, the reversal of values. The story is not only a story boxing or betting is also a story about the corruption of human dignity. Money has been doing its work since ancient times and still retains its old power. But it shows its ability in a more discreet, more despicable way. It can be said that Hemingway's talent is revealed in the way he speaks without speaking but speaking. Jack's dialogues or stories about the fight are not just about the fight anymore. And the unsaid things, why are people so deceitful? Where is the martial spirit? Raises many hidden issues that make readers ponder. Of course, any excellent work of realistic tendency can do this. The only difference is that Hemingway's Jack is not typical, he is just a character, a very Irish stinginess. It is this characteristic that motivates and lays the foundation for Jack's castle of victory. So, is Hemingway questioning human nature? Maybe right. Reading him, we see many works with this expression. So, whether directly or indirectly, whether speaking in a satirical tone or maintaining a cold, objective attitude, Hemingway has also raised the issue of awakening. Of course, human nature according to Hemingway is not only sex, greed, or fake gallantry, but mainly willpower and determination. In short, it is spiritual strength. He uses it as a measure to determine human strength. Humans are stronger than animals, bulls, swordfish, thanks to willpower. Jack defeated Walcott thanks to his endurance. The Old Waiter, a clean and bright place, again brought out the Bible to mock in a sleepless night. Hello nothingness, full of nothingness, nothingness with you. Thanks to this spiritual strength, Hemingway's people have the ability to confront evil. However, it is this spiritual strength that makes Hemingway's characters lose sleep. Here we see in them, a sensitive person. From Nick's tongue, in the Big River of Two Hearts, to the hotel owner's eyes, in Cat in the Rain, to the blind man Peaky's extremely sensitive sense of smell, it has been shown that, in terms of quality, they are people with the ability to be sensitive. A sensitive ability in a society that has been corrupted in many aspects, so they are like butterflies in front of tanks. As a result, the butterflies are crushed. As a result, if they exist, those innocent and sensitive butterflies might turn into rhinoceros, Ionesco. And as a result, if they exist, they are lonely. Unlike many other modern authors, Hemingway's lonely people are associated with wounds. In other words, because they are hurt both physically and mentally, they are lonely. An old man, a clean and bright place, sitting in a coffee shop once attempted suicide. Another old man, without wife or children, refused to evacuate but lingered on the road because he was worried about his livestock. The old man by the bridge. Nick with a head injury in an American uniform lost on the front line, the road you will never follow. Just like that, Hemingway's artistic world gradually opened up. Lonely girls, men without women, in Hemingway's words, stillborn babies, young men who castrated themselves at puberty, gentlemen, God bless you. They were unusual appearances. And once this type of person appeared, the whole old moral world crumbled before the evil desires of man. There were more than 15 countries recreated in Hemingway's short stories and their place names were countless. Notably, those places are either mountains, forests, rivers, streams, bars, hotels, where his characters stop by, or come to, on a fishing trip, hunting, traveling, skiing, or away from the land where their consciousness is screaming to return. As the son of a doctor, Hemingway was born in 1899, his mother was a religious person. As a child, in addition to following his father to treat residents in Oak Park, Illinois, Hemingway was also taught hunting by his father. He had a talent for literature early on, but left school right after graduating from high school. When World War I broke out, Hemingway applied to join the army, but a weak eye prevented him from carrying out his plan. Undaunted, he volunteered to join the ambulance team on the Italian battlefield. Once on the front line, Hemingway was buried by a bomb but survived. That feeling of the soul flying away and then returning was recreated by him in Now I Lie Down. For this action, the Italian government awarded him a medal. With 227 pieces of shrapnel, this number is probably inaccurate, stuck in his body, Hemingway was sent to the rear for treatment. Here he met and fell in love with a nurse named Agnes. The two wished to marry. He returned to America and she got married. The love story between him, he, and Luce in very short stories has echoes of this real love story. Returning to America, Hemingway worked as a journalist, went to see bullfights in Spain, hunted in Africa, fished in the ocean, participated in the Spanish Civil War against fascist Franco. When World War II broke out, he brought his ship Pilar to war by spying on German submarines at sea. He was one of the first to liberate Paris. Hemingway lived abroad most of his life. He was American, but the American context rarely appeared in his writings. Only the story about Nick and a few stories related to Michigan, like Unforgettable Memories in the Mind of Expatriates, always nostalgic for a childhood, the forest with salmon, squirrels, mink, and Indians, not the city. Hemingway died in 1961 in Ketchum by suicide with a shotgun. Hemingway's mark is bold on the world of characters. They are his own life or the lives he has come into contact with. So, coming to Hemingway's short stories, we can read many stories in a limited number of words. The words are dry and withered like the fate of many people, but it is not only them but also us and many other aspects of life. In Michigan, Jim Gilmore came to Horton's Bay from Canada. He bought the blacksmith shop of the old man from Horton. Jim was short, black with a thick beard and big hands. He was a skilled farrier, but he looked nothing like a blacksmith, though he was in leather apron. He lived above the blacksmith shop and ate at DJ Smith's restaurant. Liz Coates worked at Smith's. Mrs. Smith, who was a neat freak, said Liz Coates was the most attentive waitress she had ever seen. Liz had beautiful legs. She always wore a clean gingham apron. Jim Gilmore noticed that her hair was always pinned up on her head. He liked her face because it was so fresh, but he never fantasized about her. Liz liked Jim. She liked the way he walked from the shop to the restaurant and she often stood in the kitchen door to watch him come down the street. She liked his beard. She liked his white teeth when he smiled. She liked his unblacksmith-like manner. She liked that Mr. and Mrs. Smith liked Jim too. One day she realized that she liked the black hair on his arms and the white of his tan when he washed his hands in the sink outside the restaurant. The thought made her laugh. Horton's Bay, apart from the general store and the post office, which had a tall false screen that looked like a stagecoach parked in front, had only 5 houses on the main road from Boyne City to Charlevoix: the Smiths, the Strouds, the Dilworths, the Hortons, and the Van Hoosens. The houses were hidden in thick groves of elms, and the road was sandy. There was a lumber yard and a forestry park. A little way up was the Methodist church. Opposite it was the town school. The blacksmith shop was painted red and faced the schoolhouse. The sandy road sloped downhill toward the bay through the woods. From the Smith's back door you could see the woods down to the lake and straight across the bay. It was beautiful in the spring and summer, the bay blue and bright, the lake often smooth around the promontory, whenever a breeze blew from Charlevoix to Lake Michigan. From the back door of Smith's restaurant, Liz could see the ore barges moving across the lake toward Boyne City. When she looked, they seemed to be stationary, but if she turned into the kitchen to cook a few dishes and looked back, they would be out of sight, past the promontory. Liz was thinking about Jim Gilmore all the time now. He didn't seem to pay much attention to her. He talked about work at the mill with D.J. Smith, about the Republican Party, about James G. Blaine. In the evenings, he read the Toledo Blade and Grand Rapids by the lamp in the front room, or speared fish in the bay with D.J. Smith by the torch. When fall came, he and Smith and Charlie Wyman packed their wagons, tents, provisions, axes, and rifles. With 2 dogs, they went into the pine woods beyond Vanderbilt to hunt deer. Liz and Mrs. Smith provided food for 4 days. Liz wanted to cook something special for Jim to take with her, but she couldn't because she was afraid to ask Mrs. Smith for eggs and flour, and that if she did, Mrs. Smith would see her cooking. Mrs. Smith wasn't strict, but Liz was afraid. All the time Jim was deer hunting, Liz was thinking about him. Things got worse when he was away. She couldn't sleep when she thought about him, and she discovered it was funny to think about him too much. If she were allowed to talk, it would be easier. The night before the hunting party returned, she couldn't sleep at all, not because she thought she had, but because it was all a blur of not wanting to sleep and not being able to. When she saw the car rolling down the road, she felt restless and aching. She couldn't bear it until she saw Jim, and then everything seemed to settle down when he came back. The car stopped outside, under the big elm tree, and Mrs. Smith and Liz got out. The men's beards were long. There were 3 deer in the wagon, their legs sticking straight up over the edge. Mrs. Smith kissed DJ, and he hugged her tightly. Jim said, "Hello, Liz," and smiled. Liz didn't know what would happen when Jim got home, but she knew something would happen. Nothing happened. The men had just come home, that's all. Jim pulled back the cover, and Liz looked in. One of the 3 was a very large buck. It was frozen and hard to lift out of the wagon. Did you kill it, Jim? Liz asked. Well, not bad, was it? Jim carried it on his back into the smokehouse. Charlie Wyman stayed for dinner with the Smiths that night. It was too late for him to go back to Charlevoix. They bathed, washed, and waited in the front room. There's some left in the tank, Jimmy? DJ Smith asked, and Jim went to the wagon in the barn, and found the flask of whiskey they had brought on the hunting trip. It held 4 gallons of whiskey, and there was still some left. Jim took a big drink on the way back to the house. It was hard for anyone to lift such a large flask to drink. A few drops of whiskey sloshed on the front of Jim's shirt. The 2 men smiled as Jim walked in with the flask. DJ Smith told Liz to get glasses. DJ poured out 3 large glasses. Let's cheers, DJ, said Charlie Wyman. That was a big buck, Jimmy, DJ said. And the ones we to let go, Jim continued, draining his glass. It's a great trip for a man. There's nothing like it, this time of year, to wash your troubles away. This is the explanation, DJ. Come to the creek, boys. This is for next year. Jim was beginning to feel excited. He liked the taste and feel of whiskey. He was glad to be back in a comfortable bed, hot food, and the blacksmith shop. He drank another glass. The men went to supper in good spirits but with good manners. Liz sat at the table after she had cleared the table and ate with the family. It was a good supper. The men ate with great appetites. After the meal, they returned to the front room. Liz cleaned up with Mrs. Smith. Then Mrs. Smith went upstairs, and after a while Smith came out and went upstairs too. Jim and Charlie remained in the front room. Liz sat in the kitchen, watching the fire, pretending to read. While thinking about Jim, she wanted to see him when he left, so she could carry his gaze to bed. She was thinking about Jim when Jim came out. His eyes were bright and his hair was a little tousled. Liz looked down at her book. Jim walked behind the chair and stopped. She could feel his breath, and a moment later he put his arms around her. Her breasts were round and firm and her nipples were hard under her hand. Liz was terrified. No one had ever touched her before, but she thought, he's come to me at last. He really came for me. She stiffened because she was so scared and didn't know what to do. Then Jim held her tight to the chair and kissed her. The kiss was so sharp, so painful, so hard that she thought she couldn't bear it. She felt Jim through the back of the chair. She couldn't bear it, and then something was rising inside her. Her feelings were getting warmer and softer. Jim held her tight to the chair and now she wanted it, and Jim whispered, "Let's go out for a while." Liz lifted her coat from the hook on the kitchen wall and they walked out. Jim put his arm around her and every few steps they stopped and held each other. Jim kissed her. It was a moonless night, and they walked, their feet knee-deep on the sand path, through the woods, down to the harbor, toward the warehouse on the bay. The water was lapping at the pilings, and the promontory was dark and jutting out into the bay. It was cold, but Liz was hot as she walked beside Jim. They sat down under the shelter of the warehouse and Jim pulled Liz moved closer. She was frightened. One hand was inside her shirt, caressing her breast, and the other hand was inside her skirt. Liz was terrified and couldn't imagine how he was going to do it, but she moved closer to him. After a while, the hand that felt so big inside Liz's skirt moved away. It crept up her thigh and went higher. "Don't, Jim," Liz said. Jim pushed his hand higher. "You can't, Jim. You can't." Neither Jim nor his big hand listened to Liz. The wooden floorboards were hard. Jim had her shirt off and was trying to do something. Liz was scared, but Liz wanted it. Liz had to know, but it scared Liz. "Don't do it, Jim. Don't. You must. You will. I know we must." "No, we mustn't, Jim. We mustn't. Oh, it's not right. Oh, it's too big and it'll hurt." Liz pushed him away. She was too uncomfortable and cramped. Jim was asleep. He didn't move. She managed to crawl out from under him, sit up, smooth the hem of his skirt and coat, and tuck his hair back. Jim was asleep, his mouth slightly open. Liz bent down and kissed his cheek. He was still fast asleep. She gently lifted his head and shook it. He turned his head to the side and swallowed. Liz burst into tears. She walked to the edge of the pier, looked down into the water. The mist was rising from the bay. She was cold, miserable, and all desire had vanished. She went back to where Jim lay, trying to wake him again. She sobbed. "Jim," she called, "Jim. Hey, Jim." Jim turned and curled up tighter. Liz took off her coat and bent down to cover him. She tucked it in carefully. Then she walked across the pier, up the sand path, to bed. The cold mist was spreading, pouring through the woods from the bay.